I want to welcome everyone back to the Mission 43 podcast. We're continuing our virtual series during the COVID-19 pandemic that's affected us all across the country. Today, I want to introduce a guest of ours who is heavily invested in the veteran employment situation. We have with us today the interim CEO at Heroes USA, Ross Dickman. So, Ross, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Great to be here, Brian. Appreciate that.
Ross, I really want to get into what you and your team have done in response to COVID-19 and what is happening in the employment landscape for veterans across the country. But let's start with your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and perhaps even your time in the military.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in a military family. My dad was a career infantryman in the Army, along with his two brothers were both in the Army, and my grandfather served from World War II through Korea. So it kind of was just part of growing up that we're all kind of oriented towards that path. You moved around a lot, grew up in the kind of military dependent situation. So when it came time to choose colleges and where would I go, I actually surprised my dad and said I want to go to West Point. He had been at Old Dominion University, and then he gone to Florida State, and don't do that. Go to Florida State. I can go there, have fun in college. And I like to describe it as the worst teenage rebellion ever. I instead went to West Point and suffered through 4 years of military college. I wasn't the best cadet, but I did have the opportunity to get aviation branch when I graduated. Went to flight school, selected Apaches, which was the best choice I made. During flight school, I had started thinking I wanted to fly Chinooks just because of the versatility of the aircraft. And at that time, a lot of pictures were coming out of Afghanistan of Chinooks, putting the ramp down on a mountainside and a bunch of guys getting out doing really tough tasks, and the aircraft hovering up there and just doing a tremendous job. And I was really fascinated by that mission. But then during flight school, we did combat maneuvering flight, where you're low over the treetops, and mostly had Vietnam vets as our pilots that were teaching us how to fly that. And I just fell in love with the attack mission at that point, just providing that close air support to guys on the ground. And I had the great opportunity to select Apaches, finished that course, went to Fort Hood, and spent about 5 years at Fort Hood flying as part of the 1st of 227 Attack Reconnaissance Battalion. 2 deployments to Iraq, one as a platoon leader, one as a company commander. Did some time on staff, then went back to Rucker, served as an aide, then finished up, those mandatory Army schools that you're supposed to do, and got the opportunity to go back to Wesley to be a tactical officer for a cadet company. And it was a great sort of nesting of my career to kind of start at West Point and be a bad cadet that got in trouble a lot, and come back and be the TAC officer that's understands kind of the dynamic a bit more. And also my NCO that was partner, we used to joke that we were a bit of a social experiment of the Army in terms of acceptability of tattoos, because both him and I had sleeves, and we were the only TAC team that had sleeve tattoos. It was a lot of fun though. Around that time, I'd been there 12 years and was kind of wanting to find some more stability and look to do something a little bit different. And while I was doing my career search, I actually got connected to someone who was part of Heroes USA in their search for a program director for the Independence Project. And they said, hey, this sounds like it could be something you're interested in. You're looking to be connected to a values-based organization that's delivering individual and scale impact. And looked into it, interviewed. I applied for the position when Brian Stan was the CEO of Heroes USA, and interviewed with a bunch of tremendous leaders and advocates in the veteran space. And one of the strongest I had met at that time was Thomas Meyer, who used to run veteran programs at the Philanthropy Roundtable. And Thomas was an instrumental guy in terms of veterans philanthropy. And he really helped launch me into Heroes USA to run the Independence Project. And along the way, got the opportunity to just really grow with the mission, grow with the organization. And for the last 2 months, yeah, stepped up in this near-term period to be the interim CEO as our board conducts a full search. And it's been a great learning process to navigate an organization during COVID-19.
Nice. Well, I definitely want to get into a little bit of that Independence Project. But this is a far cry. The work you're doing now is a far cry from blowing things up, right? Flying that Apache around,
Yeah.
providing close air support to ground troops. I mean, that was a little more exciting probably than what you're doing now. But the
Yeah.
work you're doing now is absolutely vital to the continued success for our military veterans and military spouses across the country. So I'm sure you missed that time in the cockpit, but this is important work. So let's dive in a little bit. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about the Independence Project. What is it?
Yeah. So the Independence Project was actually kind of started as a bit of a theoretical problem solving process in terms of, we're looking at this growth in veterans unemployment. And one of the key founders of it was a wounded veteran, lost his leg in Iraq, and had managed to stay on active duty and complete a PhD, and he worked as a White House fellow. And along the way, he kept noticing that people he'd shared time with in Walter Reed were struggling on the employment side. And so what started as a very anecdotal kind of thing of this is what I'm seeing from people I know influenced his studies for his PhD and influenced like the types of workforce task forces he was put on at the White House to look at large scale across the U.S. what's happening with veterans unemployment, specifically within the disabled group. And what they kind of noticed is as the benefit structure changed in regards to how certain tiering of veteran disability payments would occur, and then over 50% disability, over 60% disability, different access gets turned on as well to you can retain your retirement and your disability check, or you get an advancement in terms of federal service selection. you know, what they noticed is that there's a kind of worrying corresponding rate and drop off of labor force participation and an increase in unemployment. And those two are usually connected together in that unemployment is only a partial look. The number we get in terms of from the federal government, the Census Bureau, on unemployment is only those who are actively searching for jobs. What was really worrying about the research was that there was this growth in veterans who weren't competing in the labor force. And, by you and my standards, we'd probably consider them generally unemployed. They're not working. But by Bureau of Labor and Statistics standards, they're not considered unemployed because they're not trying to work. And it's a very nuanced deviation there. But what they'd kind of learned through a variety of studies is that as the rate goes up of people who are receiving higher level benefits, the labor force participation rate was declining. Okay, well, how can we tease that out and study it a bit more and figure out, what are injections that we can put into the way that disabled veterans experience the labor force to drive that rate back up and get them more engaged in the workforce, because otherwise what's happening is we're losing high skilled labor, and these young men and women are losing a sense of purpose, and it becomes like you're paying them to lose their identity in a sense. And that's worrying in a lot of ways, but mostly to me, I was drawn to is there's so much great talent out there they could provide, and they could be attracted to a purpose and a mission that I want to be an integral part of helping drive that. So what we did at Hire Heroes USA was we launched two versions of the study. The first was, we called it a pilot, but it was kind of more like a proof of concept, where we used client base that we had. We filtered and sorted them by disability. We invited them to take part in sort of an enhanced service delivery model. And what we did is we ran a very, very intense in-person training with them, and we provide them access to certain cash boosters, essentially, that they could use in really specific ways to overcome barriers to employment and to encourage them to be upwardly mobile, meaning once they found a job, we want to encourage them to earn more in that job, to take on more, to grow within the role. And so kind of trying to nest service on both sides of transition, like really intense training, cash to get over barriers that could be clothing, technology, could be travel to an interview. You never know what is going to be a barrier to someone. What we learned, some of them were like childcare for single parents can be a huge limiting factor in your ability to
Sure.
get to an
Yeah.
interview or start a new job. And so after kind of running the pilot, we had enough to um, really grow the program into a more robust and what we'll call scientifically rigorous study, which is what the end goal was, is to have something that withholds scrutiny from both labor scientists, economists, Congress, the VA, whoever, that they can look at that and say, look, this isn't to upend the current system, but this is to enhance and make sure that what the service delivery these men and women are getting actually correlates to great quality of life. And that's kind of how I view it is, the disabled veterans programs out there are trying to help. It's just the process is also having some unintended negative consequences. So what can we do? What can we inject in that process to yield a better outcome for the individual veteran on the other side?
So it's an alternative view, really, of the current process and disability ratings, and it's injecting, some initial opportunities for long-term benefit for these veterans instead of just being reliant on the
Yeah,
system for a paycheck.
yeah. The goal was to have them, one with a sense of empowerment and sense of purpose, that they know what their career identity is going towards. I mean, we kind of talk about what we do for a living as a cornerstone of who we are.
Yeah.
You get on at non-COVID times, you get on a plane, and if I like to say, if you're a seat talker, you ask the person next to you, what do they do? And it's just kind of question one or two, usually, of just forming connections with other human beings. In our economy and our nation, if you can't answer that, have a conception of the purpose and value that you bring, you're setting yourself up to hurt in the long term because it'll have psychological impact. And then that psychological impact can lead to physical harm, and it can really hurt people. So what we wanted to do is really just focus on advocating for the veteran and making sure the type of monetary resources getting are correlated and correspond with the deliberate outcome. So that's why the biggest, I think the biggest change of it that the VA could adopt in an early scale is adjusting the benefit structure so that the cash that's going to the individual is tied to deliberate types or outcomes. Like, instead of just here's a lump sum and it becomes supplemental daily income, is a more deliberate distribution process that's like, okay, well, here's what's happening in your transition. At this point, you're doing all of your job search on that computer that everybody in your company shares at whatever unit you're in. That's not good. You need your own individual computer. And so that's step one. You got a network. Now you have an interview. You need some clothing for it. Or we try to have a broad view too of one of the things that we learned in the pilot of the Independence Project was that quite a lot of veterans were interested in entrepreneurship, and with the type of flexibility we had to overcome those barriers, they could use part of that funding to purchase equipment for their entrepreneurial venture or training. Or we had one young lady who she was doing a tremendous job of training dogs, mostly like German Shepherds, and she already had a bit of a facility, but it needed a lot of improvement. She needed new clothing, she needed new contracts. Like, we were able to support that. She was able to grow her business that had been just sort of a passion project into a full-time opportunity. And that's kind of what we wanted to use it towards, is find that passion, find that purpose, and what are ways we can supplement that to help you achieve it. Because now you're not only doing what you love, it's yielding enough income to support you and your family, but also the economy gains, your neighborhood gains, your community gains, kind of like the Mission 43 pillars. This person's now really nested in their community. They're an integral part. That's a great outcome for everybody.
Yeah, I like the fact that you use the word empowerment. So this project could potentially lead to an improved process of empowerment for our veterans when they transition away from the military. From my perspective, there's no worse identity than when somebody sitting on a plane next to you asks you what you do, and your response is, "I'm a disabled veteran." I mean, how limiting does that sound when you probably have a long life to live, and a life of that could be very fulfilling if you're set up properly for success. So, where is the study right now? I know it's a multi-year study, but where are you all in the process?
So we're nearing completion of the Hire Heroes phase of it. We have about another year of Hire Heroes USA involvement in it, and that's we're past all the in-person treatments. Mostly, what we're focused on now is the virtual service delivery. We're winding down the certain access to the different monetary pots that they have access to help overcome those barriers and enhance their upward mobility. Those will be closed out, all complete in 2021. And at that point, it'll all be in the hands of our dedicated research team at Westat, and they'll do continued study looking at their overall success and doing quarterly check-ins with the clients at that point. You know, our team will stay engaged if they're still in the job hunt, because that's part of the Hire Heroes USA commitment to it. Is that if those individuals are still searching, they are clients. So even if they find a role and they're not happy with it down the road and they want to change that, we're still connected with them. But the delivered injections of those monetary resources will end in 2021.
So let's talk a little bit about the transition process away from the military and what your team at Hire Heroes USA, uh, what do they see as some of the biggest mistakes that veterans make in that process? I mean, that's why you exist, right? There's a
Yeah.
problem to be solved. So, what are some of those problems that you see continuously in the veteran transition process when it comes to employment?
Yeah, the listening service member population's been our bulk client group for a long time now. We serve any type of veteran, military spouse, and active duty service members. But what we've found over the years is that those who are transitioning make up the majority of our clients. And so, we're talking about post 9/11 vets, every rank from E1 to O3. We want to keep them moving their transition process forward. One of the first kind of things is this willingness to ask for help. It's hard. I get it. I suffer from it too at times. Go down, focus in, and just do. And they're navigating the employment space. You can't do it on your own. I mean, it's best if you have someone in your corner. And so one of the earliest hurdles an individual has to overcome is accessing the resources that are out there and actually signing up and saying, yeah, I do want to commit to a little bit of help, because I don't know everything. And leaving the military, you don't know everything about the employment market out there. It kind of ties to waiting too long to ask for help. One of the areas that we've really learned is that the junior enlisted population that we serve tends to wait a lot longer to come and ask for help, whereas NCOs, senior NCOs, and junior officers generally are asking for help before they leave service. But junior enlisted are waiting until they're past that point of transition, and now maybe they're struggling a bit more to find their footing. And what we've seen is a little bit, if you ask for help earlier, if you sign up for services sooner, your outcome is better. It kind of, it correlates, it makes sense in a very cognitive way, but when you think of it from the labor market terms, there's a real return on investment that firms receive by catching someone as close as possible to the last job that they had, because that person's still actively searching. They're engaged, their skills retention is high, and they're trainable in a lot more ways. Whereas someone that's struggled for a year and hasn't found their footing, it's harder to make that sell. And then, start to get maybe a sense of desperation in their search, and firms start to look at everything that you do in a questioning manner of, do you need just any job, or are you coming for this? If you're coming out of the service, you're able to answer that question a lot better to say, no, this is the job. I'm at my best potential right now. Um, and so activating help sooner rather than later always yields to better outcomes. Yeah, the other's kind of just an expectation management side of it overall. One of the areas I struggled with leaving the Army was after about 18 months, I started getting the itch, and I was like, no, wait, still in the same house, still doing the same job. Like, when's the next change? When's the next promotion? When's that? And the Army, my background, it was things. The only constant was change. Your job would change, your people would change, you'd move. That's not necessarily the case in the civilian market. You can certainly make those choices, but a lot of firms really count on and really want people that are committed to growing with the organization.
Yeah, sure.
And some of the larger corporate, Fortune 500 organizations really highlight and love that they can point to their CEO of this multi-billion-dollar corporation and say, this individual started at the lowest level in our company 25 years ago. I mean, the Army loves that too, right? Our generals started at the lowest level 25 years ago. Here, look how great they're doing. Firms want someone that's committed to the firm value. And so if you activate and engage earlier, if you seek help and you manage expectations, right, you're able to have a much smoother transition. But those are kind of the big ones. There's certainly more nuanced data that our team is working on. They're diving deep right now into our outcomes measurements from 2019, and we're going to be producing our Hire Heroes USA report this year where we summarize everything from 2019, and that's going to be really exciting to have. If you love to read 100-some pages of deep data, you got that. But don't worry, there'll be an executive summary as well that hits the high points.
Yeah, good. Well, I know you guys are a very data-centric organization, and I appreciate your thoughts there on really the humbling process of transitioning away from life of military service and humbling yourself, asking for help, because you really, just covering that landscape can be very challenging. I don't care what rank you are. I mean, I've seen, O6s depart the military and struggle finding employment, where they're type A guys, they climb the ranks rapidly in the military, they did everything right, and they almost seem untouchable, by the civilian labor force. Nobody wants to hire them. And they have to reflect hard on who they are and what they offer. Like, what value do they bring, and how do they project that value in an interview process? And that goes for that O6 transitioning down to that E3 leaving the military. It is very, very humbling. So now we're in a COVID-19, pandemic situation. We still have projected approximately 250,000 veterans that will depart the military in 2020. And based on the unemployment rates right now, because of COVID-19, there's now exponentially a higher number of unemployed veterans and these departing the military, compounding the issues for veterans seeking quality and meaningful employment. So what is your team seeing from a data standpoint, a research standpoint?
Yeah. So, we've been talking to our clients a lot about kind of what's their perception of the world that they're seeing, because that's really going to inform their energy level, their engagement with us, their commitment to the process of searching. And some of those numbers are a bit troubling in that about 64% of the clients that we've talked to have expressed some type of a job impact caused by COVID-19. Either they've lost or had furloughed positions, a slowdown in their hiring process, withdrawn offers. And that kind of has correlated to what we've experienced as well, and that some employers have slowed down their search with us and said, hey, we still want to hire veterans, but we need to put a pause on it for 3 months, 4 months kind of situation. And so that's obviously concern one is, as the unemployment grows, what's the kind of supply side for us in terms of roles that we can help them find. Our need in terms of clients that are coming to us is still growing, and clients are still coming and saying that they need help. What's interesting is the distribution of those clients has changed a lot, that now our bulk clients make up already separated veterans. Veterans who've been out for 6 months or longer are coming to us in larger numbers, and active duty have dropped off. They're now our second largest group. And what we think is those active duty service members are looking at the economy, looking at COVID-19 impact and saying, I'm going to wait a bit. And if it's they're choosing to leave the service by a choice that they've made, they might just be putting pause on their search for a bit to say, let me wait and see, and then dive back into it when I know that there's going to be something for me. So about 70% of our clients have told us that they're lacking confidence in their search right now, which that one's the most troubling to me because, the core pillar, I think in the employment search and the one that you highlight as well is empowerment. We want them to have the confidence to search, the confidence to interview, the confidence to network, and go out and tell someone their worth and to kind of fight for that. So that one's a bit troubling. The last is about 55% have told us that they're concerned about what the state of the economy is in terms of whether or not there's going to be jobs. And that one, what we found really interesting is that when we talk to employers, we just did a webinar earlier this week where we talked to some employers, and about 50% of the employers told us that there's been no change in their hiring process based on COVID-19.
Interesting.
Which tells me there's a bit of a mismatch. The client group was much larger, so it's a bit more robust data. The employer side was a bit smaller, and so it might not be reflective of the group overall. But I think it does that there's a bit of a mismatch in terms of what the clients are perceiving the labor market, what the employers need. Because employers that we've talked to want to still hire veterans, they're still actively engaged in that. So a lot of what we've been focused on is trying to drive that connection and activate and encourage people to still search. And then, meet the need where it's at. We've really grown our virtual service offerings in terms of webinars, virtual career fairs, all types of virtual training events, and seeing about 117% growth in terms of the clients that are coming to and paying attention to those. One of the numbers that we pay attention to on our webinars is something called attentiveness, which is how often is the webinar screen, the top screen that someone's watching.
Yeah.
And wanting to make sure that the content that we're putting out and the events that we're offering receive attention from the client who's there. Because if they're not paying attention to it, then it means we're not telling them what they need to hear. And so we're really paying close attention to that to make sure that our attentiveness is up. And our team that manages our virtual offerings, our manager of virtual programs, has done a phenomenal job in terms of really driving the type of information and access our clients need and want.
Okay, Ross, so how has your team at Hire Heroes adapted to COVID-19? What kind of changes have you guys had to make in order to remain engaged with your clients?
Yeah, one of the first things we did was kind of send everyone to a remote status, work from home status. Because of the nature of our client engagement, our transition specialists and support team can still be fully invested with the clients, but make sure our team feels safe and that we're not challenging their health as well. But what we really kind of had a bit of creativity and freedom it's sort of brought to challenge ourselves in terms of who we partnered with out there, what are the firms and companies that are looking to hire veterans, and how can we activate and engage this kind of support. We recently had a great opportunity to partner with the CDC Foundation. They're looking to hire in COVID response, and there's a variety of roles, everything from nurse practitioners, epidemiologists, to kind of accountants to variety of staff roles. I mean, operations managers, project managers. I mean, the list is huge and varied, but they really wanted to stay engaged with the population that could step in, kind of knows the federal service, and would be value added right away. And so they partnered with us to help find veterans or military spouses for those kinds of roles. And that's kind of, I think, really a great sign in terms of how firms out there want to help in response to unemployment growth. But kind of what we're hearing too is they think it's a great chance for them to find great talent. Now is a time when uh, a lot of really good, talented people are out there and might need a job. And so companies are looking at it in a very activated and energized status to say, now's my chance to position myself well to get the best people working for me. And we're looking at our client group and saying, hey, there are great people here. This is a chance to help these men and women find their next purpose in a variety of firms that maybe we weren't partnered with before. And so we're really trying to push that a bit to try and stay creative and stay bold in searching new partners. Uh, you know, Other things that we're doing is really trying to activate our messaging line because our clients that are out there that I mentioned who are seeing the economy and wondering about what's their place in it, maybe lacking confidence, our pitch to them in terms of come sign up, commit to the work now because it's going to pay dividends for you later has to be a little bit different in that they might have just gotten furloughed or lost a role that they really enjoyed. And that's tough. It sucks for everyone when that happens. So finding them and telling them now's the time, come sign up, let's get you back out and back networking, and let's really try to advance your position now so that when that firm does approve the offer and the cash is there, that you're first in line, that they know you're the best talent for them, the best value for them, because you're going to grow that firm right away.
Are you
So that's kind of
seeing
how we're looking at it.
Are you seeing veterans also expressing desire to increase their employability? I know there have been studies about the underemployment situation with veterans taking jobs that may be below their skill sets. Is this an opportunity for them?
It absolutely is. And, measuring underemployment's been one of our kind of core things that we've been really trying to be one of the leaders in terms of the data on veterans underemployment. I don't want to speak too much to that data while our team's putting together the Hire Heroes report. Otherwise, my director of program ops and data might come and drive over to my house and let me know. But
Yeah,
um,
do a drive by
but
on you.
what it's been showing is that for sure the opportunity is there, and that the clients that are struggling, on average, we've been able to help raise in 2018. We were able to help raise their salary by over $20,000 on average. We think now is a great time as well. If someone is struggling in a role that they know is not really using all their skills, is to get out there and find that next best opportunity that is going to help them grow. One of the things we really want all our clients to do is not just get a job that pays them right, but get someone that gives them that advancement, that investment in their skills, that opportunity to use who they are and what they know in a way that's fulfilling.
Ross, who are some of the companies that your team is working with? You mentioned companies that are still seeking to hire. Who are some of the big companies that you've seen really invest in the veteran workforce?
One of the biggest is for us is Amazon. Amazon has not only been actively engaged and a big supporter of Hire Heroes USA for a long time, but they looked at what we were doing from virtual service offerings and said that they want to be playing a bigger role in that as well in terms of reaching clients, communicating about the opportunities. Um, the big one for us has been Amazon in this time period. There are a few others that we're still working contracts with. I don't want to quite speak to yet, but we're also looking at a variety of finance firms, and really anyone who plays a role in logistics or technology. A firm that's been a great supporter of ours and hiring veterans in the long term has been Altria as well. And during this time period, they've been just wonderfully supportive of the kind of suppressed issues that we've seen in terms of engagement, in terms of client satisfaction, that wanting to stay committed and engaged to our clients. Altria has been really proactive in talking to us about, okay, what can we do to support in that way? How can we help? What do you need to help navigate this near-term time period? Um, a few of the others that we really have been great supporters, Navy Federal Credit Union and the USAA Foundation have both been wonderful partners for us. And so trying to look at, not just limiting ourselves to one industry area, but across industries, there's a need and a want for veteran talent. And we want to be that provider to link these wonderfully talented men and women and military spouses to these firms who want that value right away.
I'm curious, Ross, how many job openings are posted on your Hire Heroes USA job board right now?
Right now, we had about 8,000, I believe, as of last week. But we've seen a few drop off, but overwhelmingly, there's still a lot of opportunity out there. And, one of the best things about that job board is that if a Hire Heroes USA client is using that job board to apply, it is helping them get a foot in the door a little bit early compared to other job boards because it's linked right from us and we're a deliberate partner in that way. Whereas, it's another offering that, we can't really quite help as much. We're having other firms that are coming to us and asking to help with sourcing, which is, where they're looking for something very specific. And, we're happy to take that on as well to help connect great talent to great firms.
Ross, I just want to mention, one other area where you all provide support that I think is vital is support to the military spouse. Can you talk to that a little bit and what your team does to support that military spouse in their own career aspirations?
Yeah, absolutely. We identified that a long time ago that military spouses were struggling in terms of not just finding roles, but in being compensated appropriately in those roles, and finding the type of companies with the flexibility that the nature of the military lifestyle they could still have a fulfilling career there. And so one of the best choices that we made a couple of years ago was to grow it as its own deliberate program offering. And under the leadership of the manager of that program, Kelly, what we have seen as exponential growth in spouse hires, spouse help, and spouse salaries. So, those have gone up by over $16,000 from when we started measuring it. Only about 5 years ago, we started measuring what these spouse salaries were. And over that time, by investing it as a deliberate program where that team only works with military spouses. And so they're very, very attuned to the unique nature of the roles. They're very, very invested in terms of how do we need to manage these resumes that might have been kind of jumping around in terms of a variety of locations. Maybe there's some gaps. Maybe there's really deep knowledge and skill set in one area that was towards one career field, but now they have to pivot career fields because of a move. Finding ways to overcome and help mitigate those to the resume and advance the individual's discussion about who they are and the value they bring and networking and interviewing. Kelly's done a wonderful job of growing that. And we're really excited because we now have some partners coming to us and saying that they're looking to explore deliberate partnerships focused just on military spouses. And that's due to what Kelly has done to really mature and grow that program.
Yeah, I know that's great work that your team's doing to support that community of military spouses. You've projected an outlook of optimism with us today, Ross, and I think that's a very important message. Companies are still hiring, companies are posturing to hire. You all and others are projecting all the value that perhaps military veterans can provide to the workforce in these companies you're engaging with. So, despite the perception that these may be really bleak times, the optimism is I think well received. I know 2019 was a banner year for you all. I think you helped
Yeah,
over 10,600 folks find meaningful employment. Here in
yeah,
Idaho alone, I know the team here on the ground helped over 600 find
yeah.
meaningful employment with really respectable salaries. So we appreciate the work you and your team are doing. We really appreciate the crew here in Idaho as part of our Mission 43 team. So thanks for the information, Ross. We appreciate you all, the work you're doing. Anything in the future that you want to let us know about? I mean, are there any major initiatives coming up?
I would keep an eye on our virtual events page. We're continuing to grow a lot of what we call our Service to Success series, where we're trying to help partner and link up with employers and veterans and kind of take them through the journey a bit, educate them on what's out there, and give them some insight in terms of how they might activate veteran talent for their firms. The other thing is paying attention for when we launch the 2019 Hire Heroes USA report. That's going to have the robust data analysis of our impact for those 10,607 clients that we helped hire, plus all the others that we helped, whether it was resume, mock interviewing, networking. You know, our impact from 2019 will be really broken down and segmented, and it will help understand kind of where those gaps in need out there so that great partners like Mission 43, we can all kind of activate together to help those in need. um, Also, we're hoping this year, that some events will kind of open up again and we'll be able to do some kind of celebrations. This is our 15th year since founding. And so we want to try to highlight and support that as well. Here in Atlanta, we're wanting to get more connected and invested in the Atlanta community. And we're hoping to be able to do some events focused on that, focused on connecting better with our local community. But also, I want to highlight, one of the things that we're hoping to see is that as things return to normal, some of these Mission 43 events that we are, really proud to be such a partner of, that those can occur as well. Because I know our team is really eager to get back out and continue to help advance the firm, advance the Mission 43 mission, and help those clients find that meaningful employment, be nested and involved in their communities, and really help bolster and support the state overall. So, I'm excited. Hopefully, we'll be able to travel back out there. I'd like to get out to Idaho and support the team as well. So, we'll see what the rest of the year yields. If travel's still shut down, then our virtual events are going to continue to go on. We've actually got a virtual career fair next week that's on our events page. And if you are looking for a job or you're an employer looking to hire, we are still accepting signups. And so hop on and connect with great talent.
Oh, that's great. And we at Mission 43 are looking forward to ramping up our event schedule. It's coming, and we're having a lot of good discussions about where we're going for the remainder of the year. So, Ross, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your team and everything you're doing to help take care of transitioning veterans, those that have previously separated from service, and those military spouses looking for meaningful employment opportunities. So, keep up the great work, and we just know out here in Idaho, we have a tremendous respect for you all and what you continue to do. So thanks for your time, Ross, and we look forward to talking soon.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it. And again, want to highlight, really appreciate the partnership and support with Mission 43. Our two teams work better together and supporting each other and advancing the mission of both organizations. And it's something we really value and appreciate the time and opportunity to join you today.
All right, take care, Ross.
You too.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Mission 43 podcast. For those who are transitioning from the military or those seeking employment opportunities, I highly recommend humbling yourself to the process, asking for help, and checking out Hire Heroes USA for assistance in that process. So I want to thank Ross Dickman and his team there at Hire Heroes USA, and encourage everyone to stay tuned for the next episode of the Mission 43 podcast.